Commander Vex-Nine clicked his mandibles in what passed for amusement among the Crethari species. The briefing room aboard the dreadnought Eternal Dominion buzzed with nervous energy as dozens of alien officers studied the holographic display floating above the central table. "Ladies, gentlemen, and assorted invertebrates," Vex-Nine began, his voice carrying that particular brand of confidence that came from never having lost a battle. "We have ourselves a problem." The hologram showed a remote mining colony on the planet Kepler 442 billion. Standard human settlement. Nothing remarkable except for one tiny detail that had the entire Galactic Council's military brass pulling their equivalent of hair out. 47 of our elite strike teams have attempted to take this pathetic little outpost, Vex-Nine continued, gesturing with one of his forearms. 47 teams of our best warriors, each equipped with technology that makes their primitive weapons look like stone axes. And yet, he paused for dramatic effect, watching as his audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats, chairs, and various floating apparatuses. Every single team has been eliminated by one human, a single member of that ridiculous species that barely discovered fire yesterday in galactic terms. Major Klex Tor, a towering Vendorian with skin like polished obsidian, raised a clawed hand. "Sir, surely you're exaggerating. Our intelligence reports indicate at least a dozen human defenders." "Oh, my dear Klex Tor," Vex-Nine interrupted, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "If only it were that simple. No. Our surveillance shows exactly one human defending that entire facility. One human with what appears to be an ancient projectile weapon. Meanwhile, our forces are armed with plasma rifles, quantum disruptors, and molecular destabilizers." The room fell silent except for the soft humming of the ship's life support systems. Several officers exchanged glances that seemed to question whether their commander had finally snapped under the pressure. "The human's name," Vex-Nine continued, calling up a new holographic display, "is Marcus Kane, age 32 standard years, which is practically an infant by our standards. No formal military training according to our databases. He worked as something called a hunting guide before the colony was established." Captain Ural Ossa, whose tentacles twitched with barely contained skepticism, spoke up. "Commander, with respect, are we certain our teams aren't simply incompetent?" The question hung in the air like a bad smell. Vex-Nine's mandibles clicked again. But this time there was no amusement in the sound. "Captain, Team 7 was led by Warlord Grimslade, who personally conquered 17 star systems. Team 12 included the legendary Shadowknife Battalion. Team 23? The Void Reapers themselves. Each name sent a chill through the assembled officers. These weren't just soldiers, they were living nightmares that had struck fear into the hearts of countless civilizations. "All of them," Vex-Nine said softly, neutralized by one human with a metal tube that fires tiny pieces of lead. The silence stretched on until it became uncomfortable. Finally, Lieutenant Skex Prime, a nervous insectoid officer, raised a trembling antenna. "Sir, what exactly is our mission?" Vex-Nine smiled, which was a terrifying sight given his species' razor-sharp teeth. "We're going to do what 47 elite units couldn't. We're going to capture this human alive and figure out how he's doing it." "And if we can't?" asked Major Klex Tor. "Then we'll do what we should have done from the beginning," Vex-Nine replied. "We'll glass the entire planet from orbit and pretend this embarrassment never happened." The plan, as Vex-Nine explained it, was brilliantly simple. They would deploy in 3 waves, each approaching the colony from a different direction. The first wave would be obvious, loud, and designed to draw the human's attention. The second wave would move in quietly while he was distracted. The third wave, led by Vex-Nine himself, would position themselves to observe and analyze the human's tactics. "Remember," Vex-Nine emphasized, "this human has somehow managed to defeat our best warriors. Underestimate him at your own peril. But also remember that he's just one being, made of meat and bone and whatever primitive thoughts pass for intelligence in his species." 3 hours later, the assault began. Wave 1 consisted of 20 heavily armored Crethari shock troopers, their purple carapaces gleaming in the pale light of Kepler 442 billion's twin suns. They approached the colony's main entrance with all the subtlety of a meteor impact, their plasma weapons charging with audible whines. From his position 2 kilometers away, Vex-9 watched through enhanced optics as his troops advanced. The colony itself was nothing impressive, just a collection of prefabricated structures arranged around a central mining facility. Typical human efficiency, boring and practical. Wave 1 report, he commanded through his comm unit. Approaching target, came the reply from squad leader Rax Tor, no sign of resistance. These humans must have finally learned to fear proper warriors, Vex-9 snorted. Famous last words if he'd ever heard them. The first shot came from seemingly nowhere. One moment Rax Tor was boasting about human cowardice. The next moment his head simply wasn't there anymore. The crack of the projectile weapon echoed across the barren landscape like thunder. Contact! Contact! Screamed one of the remaining troopers. Rax Tor is down. Where did that come from? Another shot. Another dead Krithari. This time it was Trooper Gax Moore, whose chest plate, designed to stop plasma bolts, proved utterly useless against whatever the human was firing. Spread out, ordered the new squad leader. Return fire. But return fire at what? The shots seemed to come from thin air. The remaining 18 troopers spread out in a defensive formation, their weapons sweeping back and forth across the colony's buildings. Their thermal scanners showed nothing. Their motion detectors were silent. Their quantum sensors detected only the ambient energy of the planet itself. Shot. Another trooper down. Shot. Another life ended. Shot. Another family that would never see their warrior return home. This is impossible. One of the troopers shouted, "He has to be somewhere. Matter cannot simply vanish." Vex-9 watched through his scope as his elite soldiers, beings who had conquered worlds and struck terror into the hearts of entire species, began to panic. They fired wildly at shadows, at buildings, at anything that might conceivably hide an enemy. Wave 2. Move in, he ordered. Flank them from the south. Wave 2 consisted of 12 Vendorian stealth specialists, their adaptive camouflage making them nearly invisible to most forms of detection. They moved like ghosts across the rocky terrain, their reptilian forms flowing from cover to cover with predatory grace. No thermal signature on the human, reported their leader, Captain Voss Traxax. No electromagnetic emissions, no quantum disturbance. It's like he doesn't exist. Another shot echoed across the battlefield. Another member of Wave 1 died. Keep moving, Vex-9 ordered. He can't watch all directions at once, but apparently Marcus Kane could. The first Vendorian died while still in stealth mode, his camouflage flickering off as his body hit the ground. The second made it 3 steps further before joining his companion. How is he doing this? Captain Voss Trax hissed into his comm. Our camouflage is perfect. Even our own people can barely see us. Clearly not perfect enough, Vex-9 muttered. The battle, if it could be called that, continued for another hour. One by one, the galaxy's most feared warriors fell to an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't track, and couldn't comprehend. Their advanced technology, their superior training, their overwhelming numbers, all meaningless against this one human. When the last member of Wave 2 died, Vex-9 found himself alone with his remaining officers, staring at a battlefield littered with the bodies of supposedly invincible soldiers. Sir, whispered Lieutenant Skex Prime. Perhaps we should call for orbital bombardment. Not yet, Vex-9 replied, though his confidence was beginning to waver. I want to see this human for myself. He activated his personal camouflage system, the most advanced stealth technology in the Krithari arsenal. Then, moving with the careful precision of a predator, he began to approach the colony. The silence was unnerving. No wind, no wildlife, just the soft crunch of his boots on the rocky ground. His sensors showed no signs of life anywhere in the colony. If not for the bodies of his soldiers, he might have thought the place was abandoned. He reached the first building, a simple storage facility, and pressed himself against its wall. His enhanced hearing picked up nothing unusual, No breathing, no heartbeat, no movement of any kind. But something was wrong. Every instinct honed by decades of warfare screamed at him to run, to get away from this place. The very air seemed to hum with danger. That's when he heard it. A soft sound, barely audible even to his enhanced senses, the gentle scrape of metal against metal, the sound of a weapon being adjusted. Vex-9 spun around, bringing his plasma rifle to bear, just in time to see a figure emerge from what had appeared to be empty air. Marcus Kane was not what he had expected. Where Vex-9 had imagined some sort of superhuman warrior, he found instead a man of average height and build, wearing simple clothing, and carrying what looked like an antique rifle. The human's face was calm, almost serene, with the kind of expression one might wear while gardening or reading a book. "Hello there," Marcus said pleasantly, as if greeting a neighbor. "You must be the commander. I was wondering when you'd show up." Vex-9's finger tightened on his trigger, but something in the human's manner made him pause. "How?" he asked. "How did you do it?" Marcus tilted his head slightly, considering the question. "Do what?" "B. Kill my soldiers. Defeat my warriors. You're just one man with a primitive weapon against the most advanced military force in the galaxy." The human actually smiled at that. "Oh, that. Well, I suppose it's because you folks have forgotten something important." "And what's that?" Marcus's smile widened. "Technology doesn't make a hunter, experience does. And I've been hunting things that didn't want to be found since I was 12 years old." Before Vex-9 could respond, the world exploded into pain and darkness. When he awoke, he found himself tied to a chair in what appeared to be the colony's main office. His weapons were gone, his armor removed, and his head felt like it had been split open with an axe. Marcus Kane sat across from him, cleaning his rifle with the methodical care of someone who had performed this task thousands of times. "Feeling better?" the human asked without looking up. You struck me." "With what?" "Rifle butt," Marcus replied matter-of-factly. "Works on everything from deer to apparently alien commanders. Though I have to say, you folks have surprisingly soft skulls for such advanced beings." Vex-9 struggled against his bonds, but whoever had tied these knots knew what they were doing. "My fleet will glass this planet from orbit." "Will they?" Marcus asked, finally looking up from his weapon. "Even with their commander held prisoner?" "They have orders." "They have orders to capture me alive," Marcus finished. "Yes, I heard. Amazing what you can learn when you know how to listen." The human stood and walked to the window, gazing out at the battlefield where dozens of alien bodies lay scattered across the rocky ground. "You want to know the real secret?" Marcus asked. "It's not about the technology. It's not about the weapons or the armor or the fancy gadgets. It's about understanding your prey." He turned back to face his prisoner. "You see, I've been hunting my whole life. Started with rabbits and squirrels when I was a kid, moved up to deer, then elk, then bears. Each species has its own patterns, its own behaviors, its own weaknesses." Marcus walked back to his chair and sat down, his rifle across his knees. "The thing about hunting is, it's not about being stronger or faster or having better equipment. It's about being smarter. It's about patience. It's about understanding that every creature, no matter how dangerous, has habits that can be exploited. We are not animals." Vex-9 snarled. "No," Marcus agreed. "You're worse. Animals follow instincts that keep them alive. You folks follow tactics that got you killed." The human leaned forward slightly. "Your first wave came in loud and obvious, counting on intimidation. Classic predator behavior. Your second wave used stealth technology, but they still moved in predictable patterns. And you?" "You," Marcus smiled. "You came in alone because your ego wouldn't let you do otherwise." Vex-9 said nothing. But the truth of the human's words stung more than his wounded pride. "The funny thing is," Marcus continued, "if you'd just asked nicely, I probably would have talked to you. I've got nothing against you personally. But when someone shows up with an army and starts shooting at my home," he shrugged. "Well, that's when the hunter comes out." Outside, the sound of approaching engines filled the air. More ships, more soldiers, more beings who thought they could succeed where others had failed. Marcus stood and checked his rifle one more time. Looks like your friends are here for round 2. You cannot defeat an entire fleet, Vex-Nine said, though his voice lacked conviction. Probably not, Marcus admitted. But I bet I can make them think twice about underestimating humans again. He walked toward the door, then paused and looked back. By the way, Commander, there's something else you might want to consider. What? Marcus's smile was sharp as a blade. I'm not the only human who knows how to hunt. And with that, he stepped out into the afternoon sun to face whatever came next, leaving behind one very shaken alien commander and the growing realization that perhaps the galaxy had vastly underestimated the species from the small blue planet on the rim. Fleet Admiral Zarathex had seen enough battlefields to know when something was fundamentally wrong. From the bridge of her flagship quantum destroyer, she stared at the tactical display showing the complete annihilation of 3 separate assault waves on the mining colony below. Explain to me again, she said slowly, her scaled hands gripping the command rail, how one primitive human eliminated 96 of our finest warriors. Navigation Officer Bleck's core swallowed nervously, his throat sac inflating and deflating rapidly. Ma'am, the recordings show impossible accuracy. Every shot, every kill, executed with precision that defies our understanding of human capabilities. Admiral Zarathex's reputation had been built on cold logic and ruthless efficiency. She had pacified 12 rebellious systems without losing a single major engagement. But this situation challenged everything she thought she knew about warfare. What about Commander Vex-Nine? She asked. Still alive, ma'am. The human seems to be keeping him. The Admiral's voice dripped with disdain, like a pet. Before anyone could answer, the communications console erupted with incoming signals. Dozens of them, all originating from various points around the planet's surface. What in the 7 hells is that? Admiral Zarathex demanded. Communications Officer Plex Nova's antenna twitched frantically as he tried to process the flood of data. Ma'am, we're receiving transmissions from humans, lots of humans. The main view screen flickered to life, showing not one but dozens of different feeds. Each showed a human face, and each human was holding what appeared to be the same type of primitive weapon that had caused so much devastation. Greetings, Fleet Admiral Zarathex, said a woman with graying hair and laugh lines around her eyes. My name is Susan Torres, and I represent the Kepler 442 billion Colonial Defense Network. Defense Network? The Admiral repeated. Our intelligence reported only civilian miners and colonists. Another face appeared on screen, this one belonging to a man with a thick beard and calloused hands. Intelligence ain't worth much when you don't bother asking the right questions, he said with a grin. Name's Pete Williamson. I used to track poachers through the Montana wilderness back on Earth. A third human joined the conversation. A young woman whose steady gaze reminded the Admiral uncomfortably of a predator sizing up prey. Rachel Kim here. Former Marine Scout sniper, now resident of New Haven Colony. We've been watching your ships for the past 6 hours. Impossible. Admiral Zarathex snarled. Our sensors would have detected any organized military presence. The humans exchanged glances that seemed to communicate volumes without words. Susan Torres leaned closer to her camera. Admiral, with respect, your sensors are looking for the wrong things. You're scanning for energy signatures, electronic emissions, large-scale formations. You know what you're not looking for. Enlighten me. Hunters who learned their trade tracking animals that could hear a twig snap from a mile away, Pete Williamson said. Soldiers who spent years fighting an enemy that knew every rock and tree in their homeland. People who understand that the best camouflage isn't technology, it's patience. As if to emphasize his point, the tactical display suddenly lit up with new contacts, dozens of them, scattered across the planet's surface in positions that should have been impossible to reach undetected. How many? Admiral Zarathex whispered. 217, Rachel Kim answered. Every adult colonist who knows which end of a rifle to point at the target. We've been setting up for this conversation since your first scout ship entered our system 3 weeks ago, and the Admiral felt something she hadn't experienced in decades, genuine fear. Not the healthy caution of a professional soldier, but the primal terror of a predator suddenly realizing it had become prey. "What do you want?" she asked. "Simple," Susan Torres replied. "You leave, you take your fleet, your wounded pride, and your surviving commander, and you go back to wherever you came from. You tell your superiors that Kepler 442 billion is under human protection, and if we refuse—" Marcus Kane's voice joined the conversation, broadcast from the colony where he still held Commander Vex-Nine prisoner. "Then you'll learn why humans spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of killing things bigger and stronger than themselves." Admiral Zarathex looked at her tactical officer. "What's our orbital bombardment capability? We could glass the entire planet in 30 minutes. Ma'am, but—" She could hear the hesitation in his voice. "But they're spread out across the entire continental landmass. Any bombardment would require multiple passes," and he paused, studying his readings more carefully. "Ma'am, some of these humans are positioned near our own landing craft." "Hostages?" Rachel Kim's voice cut through the bridge chatter. "Not hostages, Admiral. Insurance. You start dropping fire from orbit, and those pretty ships of yours become very expensive coffins." The tactical display zoomed in on several locations, showing human figures positioned near crashed or abandoned alien vessels. Each human carried not just their primitive projectile weapons, but what appeared to be jury-rigged explosive devices. "Salvaged from your own equipment," Pete Williamson explained cheerfully. "Amazing what you can do with plasma conduits and a basic understanding of physics. We might not have your fancy technology, but we know how things explode." Admiral Zarathex's mind raced through tactical scenarios. Orbital bombardment was out. They couldn't risk their own people and equipment. Ground assault had already proven catastrophically ineffective. A siege might work. But these humans had obviously been preparing for months and likely had adequate supplies. "There has to be another option," she muttered. "There is," Marcus Kane said. "You could try something your species apparently never considered, which is diplomacy." The word hung in the air like an accusation. The Admiral realized with growing embarrassment that in all their intelligence gathering, in all their tactical planning, no one had ever suggested simply talking to the humans. "You want to negotiate?" "We want to be left alone," Susan Torres said firmly. "This is our home now. We've built something here, something worth defending, but we're not looking for a war with your Galactic Council. You've already started one." Admiral Zarathex pointed out. "No," Rachel Kim corrected. "You started one when you decided our lives were worth less than your mining rights. We just finished it." "Bad?" Commander Vex-Nine's voice suddenly joined the conversation. He sounded tired, defeated, and perhaps a little wiser than when he'd first landed. "Admiral, I strongly recommend accepting their terms." "Commander, are you under duress?" "Only from my own stupidity," Vex-Nine replied. "These humans aren't the primitive savages we thought they were. They're exactly what they've always been, survivors who adapted to a hostile universe by becoming the most dangerous thing in it." Marcus Kane appeared on screen, still in the colony office where he held the commander. "Admiral, let me make this simple for you. Your people are warriors. I'll give you that, but we're hunters. Warriors fight other warriors. Hunters kill anything that threatens their territory. And you consider this planet your territory? Every square inch of it," Pete Williamson said. "Along with the 3 mining asteroids in your outer system, the orbital station around the 4th moon, and the shipping lane that runs through this sector." Admiral Zarathex blinked in surprise. "You've expanded beyond the planet?" 6 months ago, Susan Torres confirmed. "Turns out human adaptability isn't limited to planetary surfaces. Amazing what you can accomplish when you're not busy announcing your presence to every hostile species within 50 light years." The Admiral's tactical officer leaned close to whisper in her ear. "Ma'am, if they control the shipping lanes, they could disrupt supply lines to 17 systems." "I heard that," Rachel Kim said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Good acoustics on your bridge." "This is impossible," Admiral Zarathex said. "You're talking about a handful of colonists controlling strategic locations across an entire star system." 2,000 colonists, Marcus Kane corrected. "With friends. Lots of friends." The main screen split to show feeds from locations Admiral Zarathex didn't recognize. Space stations, asteroid mining facilities, orbital platforms, all showing human faces and human weapons. Turns out, Susan Torres said, when you spend 3 weeks broadcasting your intention to wipe out a human colony, other humans tend to take notice. Word spreads fast through the colonies. Faster than your fleet moves anyway. You're bluffing. Ma'am, the communications officer interrupted. I'm detecting ship signatures throughout the system. Small craft, cargo haulers, converted civilian vessels, at least 40, possibly more. Armed, unknown. But given what we've seen today, Admiral Zarathex didn't need him to finish. If the humans had managed to turn mining equipment into effective weapons, civilian spacecraft could become very dangerous indeed. So what happens now? She asked. Marcus Kane set his rifle aside and looked directly into the camera. Now you have a choice, Admiral. You can try to salvage your pride by throwing more lives at a problem that can't be solved with force. Or you can be smart, cut your losses, and go home. The Council will not accept defeat. Then maybe it's time the Council learned something new, Susan Torres said. The universe is bigger than they think, and humans are now part of it. We're not going away, we're not backing down, and we're definitely not going to roll over just because someone with better technology says we should. What about our people? Our equipment? Your commander goes free, Marcus Kane said. Your dead get returned with honor. Your equipment? He shrugged. Consider it payment for the education you've received today. Admiral Zarathex looked around her bridge at officers who had conquered star systems and brought entire civilizations to heel. Now they sat in stunned silence, defeated not by superior firepower or advanced technology, but by a handful of humans with hunting rifles and an attitude. This isn't over, she said finally. Yes, it is, Rachel Kim replied. But Admiral, when you report back to your council, make sure you tell them something important, which is, and we didn't win because we're better warriors. We won because you forgot the most important rule of survival. And what rule is that? Marcus Kane smiled. And for the first time since this whole disaster began, Admiral Zarathex understood why every species in the galaxy should be very careful about underestimating humans. Never hunt something that's better at hunting than you are. 2 hours later, the Krathari fleet departed Kepler 442 billion, leaving behind their dead, their dignity, and the beginning of a new understanding. The galaxy had learned its first lesson about humanity, though it would take years for the full implications to sink in. In the colony office, Marcus Kane untied Commander Vex-Nine and handed him back his sidearm. Why? Vex-Nine asked. Because the war's over, Marcus replied. And because I think you understand now that humans aren't your enemy. We're just people trying to build a life. Commander Vex-Nine holstered his weapon and looked out at the battlefield where so many of his soldiers had died. My people will not forget this defeat. Good, Marcus said. Learn from it. The universe is full of things that can kill you if you're not careful, but it's also full of opportunities if you're smart enough to take them. You would ally with us? After what we tried to do, Marcus considered the question seriously. Commander, I've hunted everything from rabbits to bears. The dangerous ones aren't the ones that attack you. They're the ones that learn from their mistakes. Your people made a mistake today, but you learned from it. That makes you potentially useful neighbors instead of persistent problems. As the alien fleet disappeared into hyperspace, Susan Torres joined Marcus on the colony's observation deck. Together, they watched the twin suns set over their new world. I think they'll be back? She asked. Not them, Marcus replied. But word will spread. Other species will want to test us, see if today was a fluke. Susan nodded. Let them come. We'll be ready. Marcus smiled and shouldered his rifle. We always are. Far across the galaxy, in the chambers of the Galactic Council, emergency sessions were being called, reports were being filed, strategies were being reconsidered. For the first time in 1,000 years, the galaxy had encountered something it didn't understand, couldn't predict, and definitely couldn't control. Humanity had announced its presence not with grand speeches or impressive displays of technology, but with a simple demonstration of what happened when you threatened their homes. The age of human expansion into the galaxy had begun, and it would be nothing like anyone expected.